Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Conquest Princess Fashion is Power. This is a game from Sepiyun and Fight in a Box Games. This is a prototype, all the rules, components, all that stuff subject to change, and definitely many things are changing component-wise and layout-wise and all those things, and there'll be a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. Conquest Princess Fashion is Power is a 1-2-4 player, scenario-driven cooperative game of your spaceship flying through space, dealing with the various modules, and trying to ultimately power up through sheer fashion. Genuinely, that's what this game is. There's a lot going on here. I'm going to try to give you the overview of how everything plays, but there is too much going on to really properly understand, so I'm going to... let's do what we can over here. The general idea is you are trying to win. Now, how you win is going to vary depending on the scenario you play. Again, it is a scenario-driven goal. Right now, for example, the way I have it set up right now is you're playing through scenario number 1, in which you are going to be trying to rescue these 4 pets over here. These 4 pets are not just what you need to rescue, but also they are going to give you power-ups along the way. There's lots of ways you can power up and improve your tableau and get ahead of the game, and there's also lots of ways that the game will make things worse for you. From there, so now we have our goal. How do we achieve our goal? Well, we achieve our goal by gathering a variety of dice. Over here, you can see we've already gathered most of the dice, but the dice are going to come from various areas on the board. You can see spots, for example, this 3 over here came from over here, and we have, let's say, this 2, this red 3 over here, came from over here. So you have the backwards, working our way backwards. You can see we win by getting the pets, we get the pets by getting the dice, we get the dice from the various other modules on the board, and we're going to be using those dice in order to, well, get the pets and win. So you can see how things work over there, which brings us to the next step, which is how do you get the dice? Well, every module is going to be slightly different. Over here on the TIARA, which is your spaceship, the Temporal Intergalactic Armed Response Agency, yes, acronyms like that are going to be prevalent throughout this game. But on the TIARA over here, you're going to have the various areas where you have dice blocked in different zones, and if a player goes to that zone and takes a move action, which we'll cover how you do that shortly, they can take the die and put it onto the grid over here. So that's how we get dice on the TIARA. Over here, from these invaders down here, you're going to get the dice by shooting into these invaders, and as you shoot, you're going to be drawing tokens from a bag, and when you draw hits, you're going to put them onto the board, and when you hit a die, that die will go onto the board. So shooting over here, movement actions over here, and then again over here on the Mecha-Pede, shooting again. So those are the current 3 zones, and again, this is a modular-based game, so every game might have different modules in place. For example, in this case, the Mecha-Pede and the invaders and the pets, they're all modules within this construct. They may not be present in all the games, they'll be present in certain scenarios and combinations. So in this one over here, we're gathering the dice, so we're trying to shoot into space, we're trying to take move actions on the TIARA, which brings us to our action economy. Now that we know how we win, we know we need to get the dice to win, we know we need to get the dice in the various modules in the game, well, how does the game stop us from winning, and how do we actually take actions in our turn? Which brings us to the turn sequence. In this game, you're going to be taking turns by looking at your player board over here, and you're going to have 4 actions on a general turn. There's ways to get additional actions, but you're going to have 4 actions over here, and what you're going to do is you're going to slide this down to either a move, shoot, or engage action. Engage actions are powerful and they do a lot of things, but they also end your turn early, so you kind of want to plan around the timing. So you're going to go ahead and have move, shoot, and engage. So example, let's pretend with a purple character over here. We can take the first action to do a move action. Then we could do a shoot action, which we actually, let's do the other way around. Let's go ahead and do a shoot action from over here. First, we're going to start with the shoot action. We'll draw from the bag over here. We'll see what we get, and we're going to get a miss. So we unfortunately missed. That will go onto our board. We'll take another shoot action, trying to hopefully hit a hit this time. We got another miss, unfortunately. Then we're going to take a move action to move a spot over, and lastly we'll take an engage action to use the gun zone in this spot to take a stronger shoot action. We're going to draw 2 tiles from the board and shoot into space. Let's see what we got over here. We draw 2 tiles, 1 damage, and 1 hit. So the hit's going to go onto the spot over there, and this, unfortunately, will be a damage, which means we're going to lose 1 of our 2 health. Technically, you have 3 health, the first 2 are shields, and then once you take damage after that, it triggers a disrupt action, which is where we start getting to how you lose. Now you know how we win. We've worked backwards through how everything works. You also know what a turn sequence looks like. There's a few other elements I'm not fully getting into, but you are getting, that's the basic turn sequence is normally 4 actions. We haven't covered that every character has additional abilities they start with over here. These are different abilities, and again, prototype, I don't have everything set up just for sheer table space accommodations, but over here we have certain abilities you're going to have, and for example, this person, their space acts as a teleporter, which is very helpful, and let's look at Green's ability because it's relevant to the rules we just talked. Green can take their first engage action every single turn, does not not end their turn. So they can take an engage action to teleport, to shoot, to do all that without having it end their turn, which is incredibly helpful as you go through the game. All their actions are very helpful in different ways. But now let's go into how we lose the game. So we kind of hinted upon one of them, which is when you take damage and your armor's gone. So if you have no armor and you take damage, you're going to trigger a disrupt. You're going to look at the number of disrupt chips you currently have, and you start with the game, start each and every with different amounts potentially, but you're going to look at how many of these you have, and you'll say, great, let's say I currently have 5, so I'm going to take 5 cards from the power-up deck, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm going to put those into the discard pile, these are gone, we've lost these power-ups, and I'm going to add a disrupt so that the next one gets stronger and worse. And when you run out of cards in the power-up deck, that's how you lose. Basically, there's lots of things that can happen in the game that are bad. Your agents can take damage when you don't have any health left. You can also have the invaders slowly moving closer and closer to Earth. If you don't clear this row, then the next time you have a new row coming out, instead of advancing, because normally an advance looks like this. If you completely clear this, then you're going to flip this to the opposite side, and it'll be over there, like so. And then when you have a new row of invaders, you're going to flip this over, put it to the end, and slide everything down. But when you add a new row of invaders and you can't, well, you go ahead and you take a disruption. Over here, these goo heads from these Mecha-Pedes are going to be shooting with their heads little piles of goo onto the planet that will get in your way and stop you from taking actions. And if they ever can't shoot goo onto the planet because there's no goo left, then at that point, they go ahead and trigger a disrupt action. You're going to have your ship. Your ship has these various zones on the board which all give you activations. That's how you teleport, it's how you heal, it's how you fix different spots on the board. It's how you go ahead and know what's coming with the comms. You can have a little bit of choice over what bad thing happens to you each round. The wardrobe is going to let you power up. You can have all these actions on the board, and as they take damage, they'll flip to their reverse side, and as they take damage a second time, they'll go away, and if they take damage a third time, then it's going to trigger a disrupt. So overall, the bad things in the game are all these various elements that come together that are just triggering disrupt actions. You don't have enough of something. You don't have enough health. You don't have enough, structural integrity on your ship. You have too much bad stuff heading your way. That's going to trigger various disrupt actions, which will cause you to discard power cards, which it gets increasingly worse and worse. That first disrupt action where you discard 2 or 3 power cards, not that scary. But then it adds one, and it adds one. And before you know it, 6 disrupts later, you've lost this game. So we established how you lost, we established some of the power-ups over here. There's a lot of other things going on. There's going to be fast fashion. Whenever you teleport or different abilities are going to give you fast fashion, which are these little augmentations you can have on your board that give you an ability, often at the cost of discarding the card, but it'll give you a helpful one-time ability. You're going to have the power-up deck, which you can earn power-ups through a variety of ways, certain areas of the Mecha-Pede or these invaders, or alternatively getting certain rows on this over here. These rows will give you abilities while you're trying to get towards the pets. The powers are going to give you permanent, sometimes discarding them, but more often permanent abilities that will enhance your character in addition to your starting up over there. You're also going to have the ability to have a magical transformation where as you add power cubes to your transformation sequence over here, you'll be able to go ahead and take a look at your transformation sequence card, and you'll be able to do the sequence of actions on them while at full power in order to transform and upgrade to your more enhanced version of your powerful ability. So for example, for green, instead of ignoring the first engage action of the turn, they could ignore all the engage actions on their turn and consistently just take 4 engage actions in a row, which can be incredibly powerful, especially when your ship is falling apart and you need to use engage actions to just repair every single area of the ship. Meanwhile, you're dealing with a bag building puzzle at the same time, a bag that as you hit things on the board, you are locking things in play. You're locking these tokens in play as you hit, which means there's going to be fewer and fewer hits in the bag as you are successful, unless you clear a whole row, in which case they go back in the bag. Meanwhile, you also have the invaders over here. On this board over here, the invaders are constantly invading, so you're going to have various other people moving onto the board and then damaging your ship. So you're managing different puzzles that are all coming at you in different ways, while trying to be mindful of your health, while trying to power up, while trying to bag build, while trying to do all your actions and abilities in a game and a system that seems intent on having everything collapse all around you. That is basically Conquest Princess Fashion is Power. There's a lot of rules and explanation stuff we did not get to. This is a very involved game. The actual core sequence is fairly easy to get up and running, but it's a very involved game about how many things are happening over here, and there's a lot going on while you struggle desperately to survive in space. If you want to see me struggling desperately to survive in space, I have a playthrough. You can check that out on the channel as well. But with that, let's go ahead and dive into the review, starting off with ease of play. Like I just touched upon, the game itself is fairly easy to run. If you're playing it with me, I can get you up and running in 5, maybe 10 minutes, and we can start playing the game while I manage all the peripheral stuff. On the other hand, if you're trying to manage all the peripheral stuff, it's a little bit more involved, and it's easy to miss things. There are a lot of rules and a lot of things happening in this game. It is very easy to miss small stuff in the game as you go through it. Most of those things will not get in the way of your enjoyment, so if you miss a rule, it's not the end of the world, but at the same time, there's a lot going on to actually run and manage. As far as game time, it depends on the scenario you're playing. You're playing playing the tutorial, it could be half an hour long. You're playing some of the more advanced scenarios, it could be an hour and a half to 2 hours long, depending on how much struggling back and forth. I can see you playing it quickly in an hour, well, both if you're losing quickly, but also if you're just really fast at going through it. But I think more typically you're looking at an hour and a half for an experience of this. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, and the first thing I like is that this game is hard. This game is very hard, but more importantly, and it's important to distinguish, it's hard, but it feels like you can win. Even when you lose, every time I've lost this game, I felt like I was so close to winning, and I've lost the majority of the games I've played, but I feel like I'm so close to winning, which is a big thing for me in cooperative experiences. I've always said that a cooperative experience, when you lose, you should feel like you could have won, and when you win, you should feel like you could have lost, and if you have a choice between which one happens more often, ideally more often losing while feeling like you could win gives you that sense of accomplishment when you do win. It feels like you're so close, you can do it. If you just try one more time, you'll be able to break through, and you do that, and you have to eventually be able to win, which is part of the game as well. If you always lose, it will get, at a certain point it's going to feel frustrating. But I like the fact that in Conquest Princess, I do get close to winning on a regular basis, and I get close to the end, and then just one thing happens, and I feel like I could have planned differently. In this game, when you lose, I usually play back the past few turns, and like, I could have done this, could have adjusted that, and I can usually have done it if that happened. It's just basically just, I still didn't win, but I can go back and think through it, and the game is challenging, and that gives you an incentive to keep playing and to keep struggling through it, and to get better at the system, to get better at what the game is trying to do. And there's so much to manage in this game in a good way, not just in like the tedious maintenance and management of a game, but rather the different modules in play, all the different modules, and again, this is even everything, but the different modules you're going to have in play, and the way they all integrate to give you different sets of challenges to deal with, the different sets of cards you're going to have for the various missions, and the different things they're going to throw at you, and trying to balance the fact that you are bag building while you're trying to keep these aliens at bay, while you're trying to destroy the Mecha-Pete heads so you don't have goo overwhelming the planet, while trying to get the dice so you can slowly get to your pets, whether because you just want pets because they'll help you power up, or also because it might be the actual goal of the particular mission you're going for. Meanwhile, you're struggling to figure out the exact way to build out this board to get the various benefits along the rows while getting the columns and pets that you need over there. You're also trying to be mindful of the power-up deck and the fact that if you go through it too quickly, both from, having disruptions as well as just from taking power-ups, you're running out and you're burning through your life force. You also have to be mindful of the fact that the ship is slowly self-destructing. Even while you keep all the elements of the ship at bay, you can never have all the people you need everywhere. You're trying to power up your characters all while doing that. You're being mindful of the various upgrades and fast fashion you're getting, everything. There's so much here to manage in a very rewarding puzzle that is just incredibly intricate, incredibly rewarding, and just a ton of fun to go through. And there's powers and abilities left, right, and center. You start off the game with powers. You start off with asymmetric characters who, by the way, share each other's powers. We're in the same spot. All agents in the same spot as another agent benefit from all of that agent's gear. We share, we are friendly, we're a family here. Together we are going to make it work. And so that means there's a lot of tactical maneuvering to which agents you team up. Are you going to diversify? You're going to have 2 agents on the ship and then 1 agent here and here. What about 2 here and 2 here, leaving the ship alone? You might die very quickly, but you'll have stronger, faster turns up here. There's a lot of ways to approach this game, and all of them have merit, and the question is figuring out the way everything works together, combined with your specific situation of the specific bad things that are happening and the specific good things you have at your disposal to try to find your advantage and your push forward. And the game has a modular-based scenario approach, which I like a lot. That keeps the game fresh and interesting. It means that even as I figure out mission 1, even as I go through this and finally get it all working and I solve it and I think I have it, in addition to the fact that it's just replayable in its own right, we also have the fact that there's a scenario modular based approach, which means maybe the next game we're playing with this and this, but not this, and you're going to have different things that are intermingle, forcing you to re-examine the same construct, re-examine the same puzzle. That puzzle you're getting better and you're figuring out, you have to figure out how to re-approach it with different constructs in play, and I overall really enjoy that approach to game design in general. And here specifically. As far as what I don't like here, there are going to be 3 things. I would say that they have various degrees of how annoying they are, but to that end, the first thing I'll say is table space. And this, again, prototype for the next few complaints, prototype in every aspect, but the first thing is the table space here is large. And I'm saying this to somebody who I have an extra sideboard that's not even on the table right now. It's where you store all the extra cards and discards and tokens, and I'm just not using that because table space is at a premium over here. But additionally, you have, every character has this additional board where you actually track all your upgrades that you have, which again, I don't have on the table right now because it would just take up too much space. And I know some elements of the game are being redesigned to try to make it more table space friendly. But there's a lot going on. There's a lot to manage, both in terms of practically speaking setting up and tearing down the game because of how modular the approach is, but also just the table space this game takes up is not insignificant, and that can get crazy very quickly. It is not a big deal, but it certainly is something to note. I'll also say that power-ups as the timer of the game, I don't love that either. Right now you're burning through the power-up deck, which I don't mind the theoretical aspect of burning through the power-up deck. What I do mind is, especially as you get to the end and you're trying to figure out if you'll win or lose, there are times when you get to the end, not just times, I think it's happened to me twice already, where you get to the end of the game and the thing that makes you lose is that you draw a power-up, which is not optional. If you draw an actual power-up from one of these locations on the board, there are times where it's a choice. Going to the wardrobe is a choice. There are other times where you have to draw a power-up, and losing because I got a good thing is a frustrating feeling. It's like, oh great, I got a reward, and the reward makes me die because I have no power cards left in the deck. I could have survived had I not taken another disruption, but I got a power-up deck. So that's the worst of it. But even when that doesn't happen, even when it's early on, every time you draw a power-up, you have to wait, you have to kind of measure up how beneficial it is, because that is a good thing that'll help you, but it's also the timer on the game. I don't love it when it's the timer on the game, and I really don't like it when it's literally the thing that makes you lose at the end of the game. Like, I almost wish power-ups were optional. You can choose to take them, so you don't get forced into a reward that then punishes you. Now, it is part of managing the game. It's not the end of the rule, but it is a slight inconsistent approach in terms of, mentally speaking, to get a good thing as a bad thing. I don't love when that happens. I think early on, when it's more of a, when it's happening early on, then it goes into the economy of the game and the decisions I have to make as a player of the game. When it happens as the final conclusion, it just feels like a punishment when it should have been a reward. And then lastly, I'll say, and this is a matter of taste for sure, but at the end of the day, the graphic design, the components over here, and again, this is very much prototype, but it's not pulling me in. This is not a game that I resonated with as I saw it. It's a game that I wouldn't have looked at. I wouldn't have picked it up. But I know some people involved in the game, and they highly recommended, people who had played the game, and so they recommended, hey, you should try this out. It's a great game, and I'm happy they did, because I really, guess spoilers to final thoughts here, I really, really like this game. But it's not to my immediate visual appeal in terms of again, more graphic design than art, and that's where prototype here, things might change. I don't know where things are going to be in terms of the final game, but it's not a game that pulls me in instinctively. As far as things I can see others not liking, two things really. First of all, it's hard. It is very, very hard. For me, it's a pro, because even when it's hard, I feel like I could have won, but it is hard. Take that into account as you play this. This is a challenging experience to go through, and that may not be your cup of tea. I don't know if there's going to be difficulty modifications, because again, even just scenario 1, the tutorial is a cakewalk, but even just scenario 1 is already incredibly challenging, and supposedly that's the easiest scenario. So maybe the difficulty modifications, I don't personally care if there is or isn't, but, you know, right now it's definitely a hard game. I'll also say that controlling 4 characters, you have to always control 4 characters in this game, which may not be your preferred way to play it. But at the end of the day, this game is designed around controlling 4 characters. I believe, I could be mistaken on this, I'm pretty sure you're always supposed to have all 4 characters in the game, regardless of player count, which means if you're playing solo, 2-player, 3-player, like especially a 3-player, I always find that's a slightly odd count. A 4-player game, great. A 2-player game, controlling 2 characters each, wonderful. A 3-player game always has that slight weird dynamic where one person's controlling 2, or you're sharing control over 1. That's where I think a game like this can struggle from that 4-player count. For me, on a personal level, I will very rarely choose to play a game that you control 4 characters if I'm playing as a 3-player experience. So this to me is just out as a 3-player game, because I'll play something else instead. I've already played this 3-player, by the way, but again, that was a situational thing where I was trying the game with the designer and whatnot, and yeah, I would not choose this as a 3-player game if you're only controlling 4 characters. I would happily play this solo, 2-player, and 4-player, which for me is enough. That's why I put in what I can see others not liking, but just understand the mandatory 4 characters. As far as final thoughts on Conquest Princess Fashion is Power, I already said it, I like this game a lot. This game is very much my jam in the overall design approach, and the fact that it's a cooperative experience. It plays well solo, plays well 2 and 4 players as well. It gives you a ton of different things to consider and manage and be mindful of. It is hard, it is challenging, it has modular scenario-based approach. It gives you powers and abilities, ways to level up in multiple different pathways, from fast fashion to power-ups to your magical sequence and transformation. There are so many ways to work together and have a sense of teamwork as you go through it. This is an incredibly rewarding experience that I am having an absolute ton of fun with. I really like the game. For right now, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. I think that rating goes up. I think it does, but I do very much want to wait. Again, right now I'm playing with prototype with like really thin cardboard and lots of things still changing and an adjustment. I think that rating will go up because of how much I enjoy playing through this. But for right now, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5, and we'll see what the final game actually shows up as. If you're looking for other game recommendations, first of all, The Loop. This game gives me strong vibes of The Loop. Another fantastic game of trying to manage kind of a scenario modular-based approach to it, not really modular, but more scenario-based approach as you try to overcome the various enemies, accomplish your missions before you get overwhelmed. Again, gives me very strong vibes in terms of the management puzzle. A part of that's just the aesthetic and the color, you know, the wild amount of colors, and part of it is just the challenging or cooperative engine that you're trying to overcome. And then secondly, if you're looking for another cooperative game of surviving on a spaceship as things go wrong around you, Space Alert will be a very, very different style of game, but another game that's going to give you a incredibly challenging puzzle to survive through with your teammates as you work desperately to not die in space. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.